When Advanced Warfare was announced, I remember being pretty skeptical of the transition to full-on science fiction. Jetpacks, exosuits, and robots just didn't feel very Call of Duty to me. At the time, I viewed Halo as the sci-fi shooter, and COD as the more grounded series, at least thematically and aesthetically. Maybe that was a bit close-minded, but it's how I felt at the time. However, my perception of the game did a complete 180 with the release of a single promotional video. Call of Duty did a team up with Vice for a documentary about private military corporations, or PMCs for short. I had never heard of PMCs before, and this documentary opened my eyes to a world I had no idea existed. PMCs are military entities with allegiances to no country, but instead to the almighty dollar. For the right price, they'll lend their arms to any bidder. The growth of PMCs is both a fascinating concept and one that's terrifying in its implications. The fear it brings up are readily apparent. If these corporations grew more powerful than even the most powerful nations, then who would watch over them? And what happens if the wrong person hires them? I won't play the video for the sake of time, but I'll link it in the video description. However, this video, as I said, entirely changed my outlook on Advanced Warfare. This premise gives weight and reason to the game's futuristic setting. Advanced Warfare may not be grounded per se, but it is built from a very real-world premise. It looks into the future at a world where some of these fears are realized. The Atlas Corporation has greater power than any one country. What does the world look like with such a presence in it? My anticipation for Advanced Warfare grew, as I saw such potential in this premise. Advanced Warfare's premise gave the campaign not only a chance to explore new gameplay mechanics and aesthetics, but it enabled the campaign to explore entirely new themes and concepts. In a world with both public and private powers, who is to be more trusted? Who is to be more feared? With power for purchase in a way it hasn't been before, where do loyalties truly lie? All of this fascinated me, and it still does. I still stand by that Advanced Warfare has the single greatest premise in the series. However, coming up on 13 years later, did it live up to this massive potential? Well, a cursory glance would tell you no. Perhaps the most rudimentary but also telling metric is that Advanced Warfare never received a sequel. In a franchise known for creating sub-series, the lack of one for Advanced Warfare is a sign that this game didn't receive the reception of its siblings. Amidst the countless top 10 and tier list videos of the series, Advanced Warfare hardly, if ever, cracks the top 5. Perhaps Advanced Warfare deserved its lukewarm reception, or perhaps it was a game that just didn't strike at the right time. In this video, we're going to take a deep dive into the campaign. We're going to look at how Advanced Warfare builds up its world from this premise, and how it weaves characters into its story. We're going to look into the art design and the gameplay changes, and see how Advanced Warfare innovates. So strap on your exosuits and join me for this deep dive into Advanced Warfare's campaign. The game opens with the monologue by our protagonist, Jack Mitchell.
We come into this world with our eyes closed, and most of us choose to live our whole lives that way. We blindly follow anyone who will lead us, giving ourselves over to anything that provides us with a sense of purpose.
This speech nicely frames the game's larger themes, as well as Mitchell's own motivations. We'll see how his desire for purpose influences his decisions later on, but it starts with his decision to enlist with the Marines. They're deployed to South Korea to repel an invading North Korea. We're not given much more context about the war than this, but the lack of detail actually works. It ties back to this opening speech. Mitchell's eyes are close to the details. He mainly cares about his own sense of purpose. He enlisted with his best friend Will. However, you wouldn't really pick that up just by listening to the dialogue.
It's just finally starting to sink in.
No, this is what we signed up for.
Well, the old man was a leatherneck, so I didn't really have much of a choice.
Yeah? I joined up because of the old man, too. More just to get away from him.
If Will and Mitchell are best friends, wouldn't they already know why each other enlisted before storming the front lines? This dialogue is just a bit clumsy in how it's delivering this exposition. The Marines airdrop into the LZ. However, the drop is a bit bumpy. There are a lot of button prompts during the segment for Mitchell to hit buttons and switches. In the opening levels, Advanced Warfare really loves its button prompts, and it leads to a pretty infamous moment later on. When Mitchell busts through the hatch, the player is greeted with a magnificent view. This is my favorite opening level in the entire series. The depiction of a downtown Seoul in the midst of a grand war, with the sun just beyond the horizon, creates a mood and tone that are just mesmerizing to me. It's epic in scale, yet the dim lighting creates a natural somberness. Aside from the beauty of the presentation, this level is an excellent introduction to Advanced Warfare's world. Despite being Call of Duty's first venture into true sci-fi, the game wisely avoids starting with an exposition dump that outlines the state of the world. Instead, Advanced Warfare shows us its world through this first level. As the Marines proceed with their mission, they use all manner of technological advancements, such as the aforementioned drop pods, new smart grenades, rifles that 3D print bullets, and above all else their exosuits. I'll get more into gameplay later, but the exosuits have a genuine effect on gameplay. Right from the get-go, this feels like a different game, a different era than its predecessors. However, we also see technological advancements used against the Marines. They're assaulted by drone swarms, their troops are suppressed by Havoc launchers, and so on. This all brilliantly paints a picture of this world without having to use words. We can see that this is a world dominated by conflict. It's a world embroiled in a technological arms race, with new technologies constantly emerging to kill soldiers. Despite Will and Mitchell being fresh recruits, they're dropped into the middle of the hot zone. It seems like the US is running through troops quickly. The last part of this equation is Atlas. The Marines run into an Atlas PMC rescue force led by Gideon, who we'll get to know soon enough. Through their interaction with the Marines, they appear to heed to no outside authority. They are doing as they please, on their own mission to transport a priority target. After this encounter, one of the Marines asks Will about it.
Will, isn't that your dad's company?
Yup.
They got the best gear, the best pay. Why'd you never join?
Wanted to serve my country, not my old man.
I like this exposition a lot better than earlier. First of all, it makes sense that the Marine is asking Will this, given that they just ran into Atlas forces. This random Marine is also not Will's best friend, so it's not expected that he would already know the answer to his question. Better yet is Will's answer. It's so short, only a sentence, but it's so telling. Will wanted to serve his country, not his old man. There are a lot of implications here. Let's break it down. If Will worked for Atlas, he thinks that he would only be serving his dad, not his country. In effect then, he doesn't think Atlas is designed to benefit his country, or really even the world. From this we can gather that he doesn't think Atlas is some altruistic force, rather it's all ultimately just serves his father's self-interest. Will is actually a brilliant window into the character of Jonathan Irons, the charismatic owner of Atlas that serves as the centerpiece of the story. Will presumably knows him better than anyone, yet Will doesn't think highly enough of his dad to work with him. This single line tells us a lot about Irons. It's a subtle warning about the type of man he is. The Marines continue on. They need to take out a Havoc launcher, but the demolition team has been wiped out. Will and Mitchell go in to finish the job, while their team lead Cormac covers them. They rig the explosives, but Will's arm is caught in the door. They try to pull it free, but they can't. They aren't strong enough, and there just isn't enough time. Will realizes this, so he throws his friend off the ship.
It's okay. I'll see you on the other side.
It's a sad moment, and it's executed pretty well. However, I do think this moment could have resonated even more with the audience if the game had done a better job of building up Will and Mitchell's relationship to feel more believable. For instance, take The Last of Us opening. It works so well because the game makes the relationship between Joel and his daughter so convincing. I won't get into any more details than that, but I have an entire analysis on The Last of Us if you're interested. Because Will and Mitchell's relationship feels a bit forced, it's hard for this moment to have a ton of punch. What does pack a punch though is Mitchell's injury. Cormac finds Mitchell and pulls him from the wreckage. Horrifyingly, we see that Mitchell's arm is left behind. Even though Mitchell doesn't speak here, the way this cutscene is composed is masterfully done. It manages to convey the shock and horror that Mitchell feels just by the camera movements. Afterwards, there's a cutscene where Mitchell mourns his friend.
When you lose over 6,000 men in 4 hours, it's easy for one death to become just another number. But all I knew was my best friend was gone, and that part of me wished I had been taken instead.
The dialogue here is really convincing, and unlike before, he does sound like a man mourning the loss of his best friend, not just some stranger. This cutscene is also great at subtly establishing more details about Mitchell. First of all, the guy just lost his arm. That is a monumental, life-changing injury. However, instead of being focused on what he's lost, he's entirely focused on his friend. That selflessness says a lot about a man. Secondly, this cutscene reinforces how Mitchell is more concerned with the smaller details. The outcome of the war isn't a concern for him, just his best friend. This ties back to the opening cutscene. Mitchell is more worried about his role, his purpose, and his friends rather than a larger scale look at the conflicts. Mitchell attends Will's funeral, and the game's most infamous moment occurs. The player receives a button prompt to mourn Mitchell's best friend. It's just a really bad use of a QuickTime prompt. It makes the game feel very gamey and artificial. It takes the player completely out of the moment. If this segment had merely been a cutscene where Mitchell rests his hand on the casket, it would have landed far better. Will's father, Jonathan Irons, is also at the funeral. He interrupts Cormac to speak with Mitchell.
Take care of our own. If you ever need any...
Excuse me, Private Mitchell. I'm Jonathan Irons. I'm Will's father.
Mr. Irons, I'm sorry for your loss, sir.
I'm sure you are, Sergeant. Private Mitchell, you were Will's best friend. You both paid too high a price for your country.
It was an unfortunate tragedy, sir.
It was more than unfortunate, Sergeant. It was unnecessary. Son, I want to offer you a second chance.
There are a lot of things to draw from this conversation. First, Irons is very dismissive of Cormac, and he holds a disdain for the military. He thinks the US military is ineffective in comparison to his company. Secondly, there's a certain coldness to him. He speaks fondly of his son, and there's a sadness there. But at the same time, he's passing out business cards at his son's funeral. It's clear that his priority, before anything else, has always been Atlas. Lastly, he offers Mitchell purpose. From the beginning cutscene, we know this is what Mitchell's ultimately been seeking. With his injury, being given this opportunity is a godsend. Mitchell isn't seen asking further questions here because he doesn't need to. A sense of purpose is enough for him, regardless of who's offering it. It's another reinforcement of Mitchell's desires and priorities. So there's some really smartly executed storytelling here. However, it comes after an awkward moment at the grave. Like Will and Mitchell's interaction earlier, there's an inconsistency with Advanced Warfare storytelling. Sometimes it's excellent and sometimes it's awkward. The game cuts to Mitchell, armed up both literally and figuratively. He's getting ready for a raid along with a team of Atlas contractors. They attack the house and seem to be saving the president who is held hostage. During the op, his new arm malfunctions, and at the very end he ultimately fails the mission because of it. Nobody truly dies though. It turns out this was all an elaborate training exercise in an Atlas facility. His team lead Gideon scolds him. It's apparent that he's a very gruff, no-nonsense sort of guy. Irons pulls up to the facility and asks after Mitchell. From this, it does seem that Irons has taken a special interest in Mitchell. He even rides with Mitchell to R&D to get his arm looked at. Along the way, Irons gives a tour of Atlas and his capabilities. It's a fairly natural and seamless way to deliver exposition. However, all of the info Irons gives is very top level, and it feels like the type of day one onboarding speech Mitchell would have gotten the very moment he stepped on the base, not when he's already into training. But that's definitely entering nitpick territory on my part. Overall, the exposition in this mission is well done. Gideon takes over the tour once Irons departs, and they naturally delve into Atlas's technology as they pass various training areas. I find these details and this world just so fascinating. There are even little training missions that Mitchell partakes in where he can shoot for high scores. There is a very mechanical, hands-on approach to Advanced Warfare's visual design, and I always look forward to seeing what new technology and world spaces we encounter throughout the campaign. The level ends where it begins, with the same training exercise to rescue the president. This time Mitchell succeeds, and he's given the green light to begin real work. Mitchell's first true mission is to rescue the Nigerian Prime Minister from a group of terrorists called the KVA. When his team recons the situation, they notice that Hades is among the terrorists. Hades is the KVA's leader. Hades is clearly a ruthless man, as he has no hesitation about killing one of the hostages. Atlas heads in to rescue the rest. This mission, at least initially, goes to plan. The Atlas team strikes their enemy surgically and saves the Prime Minister. This contrasts with our first mission with the Marines, which was chaotic and discombobulated from the get-go. It's a great subliminal reinforcement of Irons' words earlier. The contrast conveys that Atlas is much more organized and efficient than traditional government entities. Hades attempts to get away with the rest of the hostages, so Atlas pursues him. It's a frantic chase, which does a good job of still establishing Atlas's competency while also making Hades formidable. The villain gets away, but Atlas recovers a key hostage. Overall, the mission is considered a success, even by the mainstream media. The operators revel in their appearance on TV before their little party is interrupted by a visit from Irons. He congratulates his men on a job well done. Their successful mission has generated a lot of new opportunities for Atlas. The corporation can think even bigger. Unfortunately, their enemies are doing the same.
People of the world, you have hidden behind the protection of technology. Technology is a cancer. I am here to liberate you from this cancer. The world must be reset to its natural state. I am Hades, and I am your savior.
The KVA aren't a very fleshed out faction in the campaign. They're anti-technology, and that's pretty much all the depth to them. They don't give compelling or nuanced reasoning for their stance. While I do think added depth could have made them more interesting, I don't think it was necessary. Their argument for anti-technology is implicitly made. Throughout the game, the technological arms race is apparent, as I mentioned, and we're constantly killing people with new tech. So although their argument has been demonstrated effectively, it's still not the most compelling thing in the world. The KVA have seized a nuclear power plant and are trying to trigger a meltdown. Atlas tries to stop them, but they ultimately fail. The reactor goes critical, and disaster ensues. Hades succeeded everywhere, triggering worldwide destruction. Jonathan Irons explains the aftermath.
When you were vulnerable, we gave you our strength. When you were sick, we delivered you the cure. When there was chaos, we brought you order, stability, safety, a chance to start again. Who are we? We're the way forward.
Although Atlas failed to stop the attack, over the next 4 years, they became humanity's helping hand. They have been instrumental in building the nations back up, brick by brick. However, in the process, they've also been amassing even more influence and power. Previously, Atlas was a player in the world space. Now they're a superpower in their own right. Finally, after 4 long years, the KVA resurface. Hades' right-hand man has been sighted next to an Atlas stronghold in Detroit. Iron sends his best men, namely Mitchell and his squad, to apprehend him. He's the best lead on Hades in years. Mitchell follows Gideon through the camp, and we get a first-hand look at what life for the average citizen has been like. The camps are overcrowded, with millions of people living in them. As the men leave camp, it's clear why so many people live in them. This mission does a really good job of showing the aftermath of the KVA's attack, and helping the player understand the sheer damage this catastrophe has caused. This time, the squad succeeds at their mission. They recover Dr. Pierre, Hades' second in command. He's interrogated by Alona, an ex-Spetsnaz turned Atlas agent. Mitchell describes her.
Alona was one of a kind. Ex-Spetsnaz, now working for Atlas. She could be your best friend or your worst nightmare. You never knew which.
We see this in the interrogation. She swaps from intimidating to warm and welcoming effortlessly, and she breaks him very easily. Atlas receives Hades' location. He's hiding out in Greece. Irons brings this information to the US government. They're hesitant to greenlight Atlas to move in. A single source isn't enough evidence to justify operating on foreign soil. Irons, though, doesn't need their approval.
I want your team on the ground in 6 hours.
On whose authority?
On my authority!
Here we are witnessing a change in how Atlas operates. Previously, they played by the rules and respected the authority of governments. Now, though, Irons is willing to act, regardless of what any nations think. This sets a dangerous precedent, and it also shows the patience and calculation on Irons' part. The world has been after Hades for 4 years, so he knows that public support is on his side. It's the perfect moment to assert Atlas's dominance without risk of too much pushback. Atlas heads to Greece. Mitchell works closely with Alona to track their quarry. It's a slow start to the mission, and there's a nice build-up throughout. It feels very James Bond-esque in a good way. Eventually they locate Hades, and Atlas's ground forces move in. Mitchell controls a drone and gives them sniper support. It's a fun segment, and the game gives you a decent amount of freedom with the drone to swivel around and find good angles. However, this all ends up being another trap laid by Hades. Their target ends up being a body double rigged to blow. It's an ambush. This segment is turned on its head, and Mitchell has to use the drone defensively to protect his comrades. They manage to find the real Hades, and they close in on him. The mission's pacing is intense from here on out, and it's enhanced by the close quarters level design. It creates this stuffiness which amps up the tension. Eventually they catch up to him, and the engagement devolves into hand-to-hand combat between him, Mitchell, and Ilona. It's odd how Ilona has so much trouble fighting him, considering the fact that she's wearing an exosuit. It's another one of those moments that takes you out of the game a bit, but I'm not going to harp on it. They kill Hades, but not before he gives them a disturbing revelation.
He knows. Irons knows.
Overall, the story has pretty strong pacing. After the Hades plotline wraps up, the game wastes no time in giving us another lead to chase. In the following cutscene, Irons is interviewed by a reporter. The cutscene is laced with tension, as the reporter asks about what Irons has planned next after amassing so much power for Atlas. As he stares into the camera, the game is firmly establishing that Irons is the true villain of the story. It's why I've been a bit forgiving of Hades and the KVA's lack of development. They serve as the story's inciting incident, the tool to move the events of the game, but they're not the true opposition. Irons' villainy doesn't come as a surprise though. It's pretty evident from the beginning of the game, but that's okay. Part of the game's tension has been watching Atlas grow in size, with the knowledge that all the power they have amassed will ultimately be abused. Atlas has set up its HQ in Baghdad, which is where the next mission takes place. Irons summons Gideon and Mitchell. She has urgent information to share with them. They head to her location, and Gideon reminisces on the past couple of years, providing some exposition for the player. I haven't talked much about Gideon thus far, but I really like him. He has a very assertive, no-nonsense personality, but there is also a wryness and playful cynicism to him that makes him endearing. He continues to grow on me throughout the story. When they reach Ilona, she activates a scrambler and shows them incriminating surveillance footage.
KVA are planning an attack. He told me everything.
What kind of attack?
Power plants all over the world. They wanted me to compromise the security systems.
Where are they planning on hitting?
Seattle, Paris, Tokyo. Thousands will die. We have to tell someone.
No. We have to tell everyone. It's okay, it's all right. I'm gonna take care of this right now.
With this footage, the depths of Irons' planning truly comes into light. Everything for the past 4 years has been painstakingly calculated. He allowed the attack to go through. Crippling the globe gave Atlas the opportunity it needed to grow and seize control. Then the subsequent hunt and capture of Hades made him the world's hero, granting him public goodwill that allowed him to act with even less scrutiny. Ilona wants to escape, but Atlas has been listening in. They're captured and Irons walks in. When Ilona confronts him, Irons goes by the smart and classic playbook. He denies that the recording is real. He then tells Mitchell that he's disappointed in him. One thing that I don't really like about this cutscene is that Irons immediately discards Mitchell, and he doesn't even give Mitchell the chance to stay on his side. Gideon is in the basement watching the recording too, yet Irons gives him the chance to look the other way and Gideon takes it. I think you can make the argument that Gideon was the one who tipped off Irons. I mean, how else would Irons know about this secret meeting? However, Mitchell has been Irons' golden boy, and he hasn't really done anything yet aside from see the video. With how much Irons prizes him, it just feels inconsistent that Mitchell's thrown away so quickly. There are more moments later in the game where Irons seems to flip-flop on how he treats Mitchell. Mitchell and Ilona are held at gunpoint, but a mysterious man named X taps into their feed. He helps them out by suppressing the enemy's weapons. Mitchell and Ilona seize the opportunity to make their escape. This is one of the most well-executed missions in the game. There's a constant rush forward, aided by the addition of a grappling hook, with claustrophobic level design that has enemies converging from all directions. It really manages to capture the tension and anxiety of being on the run, with a superior oppressive enemy hounding you. Their mysterious benefactor guides them through the city. Eventually, after ascending construction cranes, they meet up with their rescuer. It's none other than Cormac, Mitchell's sergeant from his time in the Marines. Gideon catches up with them too. He's conflicted about what to do. He's looked the other way for his friends, but he doesn't commit to joining them. He tells Atlas that the fugitives are nowhere to be found, buying them a chance to escape. Cormac explains what he's been up to for the past 4 years.
Until now, we've stayed in the shadows, watching, waiting. We were formed 4 years ago, a US-led multinational unit, codename Sentinel. Our mission, to investigate the KVA attacks and prevent anything like that from ever happening again. But soon it became clear that there was an even greater threat. A man ready to exploit this tragedy for his own gain. One word keeps getting flagged. Manticore. Atlas is about to make a move, but we don't know what. It was a risk extracting you, but you're our best shot to find out what Manticore is and stop it. So how about it, Mitchell? Are you in?
Mitchell joins up without hesitation. As has been established, he's a man searching for a purpose. Cormac offers him this in the form of stopping Irons. Their first mission is pretty straightforward. They're going to infiltrate Irons' home and garner intel on his next steps. The grappling hook from the prior mission returns, although the player is able to use it in a much more freeform way. This mission offers some of the most freedom in any COD mission, at least to the point of AW's release. Mitchell has to sneak through the residence, and the grapple lets him pick his own route through. This is a good time to talk about one of Advanced Warfare's greatest successes. It has one of the strongest gameplay sandboxes in the series due to its variety. This variety starts with the exosuit. The capabilities of Mitchell's exosuit varies per mission. Some missions like this one grant him a grappling hook and jump jets. Others restrict his movement more, but offer capabilities like stim and shields. Changing up the player's baseline kit creates a natural gameplay variety. There's also an upgrade system tied to the exosuit. It's not groundbreaking by any means, but it is nice to get an upgrade to increase grenade capacity, for instance. This exo variety is enhanced by the level design. Advanced Warfare's level design differs significantly from mission to mission. Some have very open play spaces, which lets the player take full advantage of the exosuit's mobility. Others are claustrophobic and tense. The objectives too vary significantly. Some missions are linear, while others like this estate raid are more open-ended. There are some creative segments, especially in the game's closing hours. I'll touch more on these as we continue. The mixing of exosuit abilities and level design gives AW an almost unparalleled variety in the series. The gunplay is great too. The weapons are satisfying, with just enough recoil to feel powerful. They have great feedback, and I love the sound effects of the guns. Overall, I think AW's approach to gameplay lives up to the setting's potential. It feels like a true change-up to the series' combat. One of the reasons I really want a sequel to Advanced Warfare is to see how this approach to gameplay could evolve with today's hardware. Speaking of technology, Mitchell manages to find Irons inspecting a mysterious crate with the scientist. The scientist emphasizes caution, but Irons ignores him. There is some contagion inside, which Cormac deduces is Manticore. They manage to plant a tracker on the plane, and they track its flight path. It's headed around the globe towards the Americas. It's flying over Antarctica. Cormac's team Sentinel decides it's the perfect place to take the plane down to minimize exposure. Atlas reinforcements arrive, and the skirmish devolves into an all-out brawl. When they attempt to recover Manticore, they're taken captive by Gideon. He betrays his Atlas brethren and saves Sentinel.
What?
Why now, Gideon? You could have escaped from New Baghdad with us.
We'd all be none the wiser. There were just too many questions. I needed to find some answers for myself.
I think Gideon's rationale makes a lot of sense. He wasn't truly undecided about helping Cormac earlier. Gideon figured he would be of more help by operating on the inside. They recover Manticore, and after some analysis, they discover what the weapon is. It's a bioweapon that targets anybody whose DNA isn't in the Atlas system. If dropped during the battle, it's essentially an I win button for Atlas. The development of this device shows that Irons is preparing to make a play. Sentinel's new objective is to find the production site of Manticore and shut it down. Gideon has the location of the biolab. Cormac is skeptical of Gideon, but Mitchell vouches for him. I think his trust is warranted. Gideon has already gone too far to return to Atlas. They head for the biolab, but their plane is shot down, and their exosuits are disabled. The mission is a nice change of pace, as it puts the Sentinel operatives on the back foot without the technology they have been so reliant on. When they get their suits back online, Mitchell and Gideon activate stealth mode. They sneak past Atlas forces to reconvene with their allies. They successfully meet up with Cormac and they survey the biolab. Gideon wants to turn around. The mission is too dangerous now. Cormac believes that they either strike now or never.
This thing goes sideways. It's on you, my friend.
It's always been on me.
I really like Cormac's last line here, because it's a window into how he's feeling. He puts a lot of the burden of Atlas's rise on his own shoulders. It's clear that he feels responsible for letting Irons get so much power without more resistance. This sort of subtle characterization goes a long way towards making characters feel grounded and believable. They break into the facility, and they uncover key evidence that will incriminate Irons and take him down. With this evidence in hand, they make their escape. This is an explosive end to the level, and it works especially well due to the slow start. There's a nice build up throughout, and the high octane ending serves as the payoff. After the team escapes, Irons takes the initiative. He addresses the United Nations, and he admits to all the accusations.
Unfortunately, my appearance today has been clouded by a flurry of speculation that my company is developing a weapon of mass destruction which would be capable of targeting specific ethnic groups. I want to address these allegations head on. Are we developing such a weapon? No, we are not. Because we've already developed it. I am here to solve the world's problems. And I believe the world's problems begin with you.
In a nutshell, Irons announces his plans for world domination. I suspect for many players, this turn is a bit disappointing. Irons has been a nuanced, interesting character up until this point, so this revelation can come across as him devolving into your generic villain who's after world domination. A villain wanting to take over the world is pretty generic, and it comes across as uninspired, especially with the cool world that AW has built up. Under closer inspection though, I do think his motives do make some degree of sense. First off, he has demonstrated a clear animosity towards the world's governments for being ineffective. I can see how he would want to take the reins simply because he thinks he can do a better job. On top of that, I do believe you can make a case that announcing world domination wasn't Irons' original plan. Sentinel has backed him into a corner. They have incriminating evidence that will turn all of the world's nations against him. His only two options at this point are to either surrender, which isn't his style, or to go on the offensive. If he doesn't assert Atlas's superiority and force everyone into submission, then he'll go down. Even though these motivations do make sense, the game doesn't surface them in a way that resonates with the player. In writing, there's a balance between revealing too much of a character's motivations and revealing too little. Irons' motivations aren't fleshed out enough, and his actions therefore come across as artificial and plot motivated rather than character motivated. All of the groundwork is there, but the execution is a little lacking. Irons doesn't waste any time. He attacks San Francisco. Sentinel tries to protect the Golden Gate Bridge, but it ultimately goes down. The efficiency and speed of Atlas's forces is on full display. Atlas is attacking the aircraft carrier and attempting to take control of its weapon systems. Sentinel and US forces need to place jammers to slow them down and buy time. The carrier is an excellent combat arena. With the exosuit's mobility, you can jump between landing pads, and you have a ton of freedom in which angles you take against the enemy. It's a great showcase of how AW's combat and level design create a combat experience genuinely different than its predecessors. Sentinel pushes forward. Mitchell takes control of the carrier's railgun system to take out incoming Atlas ships loaded up with Manticore. The US manages to hold the line and fight back Atlas. The casualty count is high, and any chance of defusing this war is gone. The Marines and Sentinel mount an attack on Atlas's headquarters in New Baghdad. Mitchell pilots a jet in a pretty linear but high-octane segment, and then boots land on the ground in the city. The first mission is my personal favorite in the game, but I would say this mission is the best. It reaches the full potential of the exosuits and open combat design. Mitchell is equipped with his boost jets and grappling hook, and he's given free rein to take down 3 turrets in the area. The player can tackle these objectives however they wish. This is a more dynamic and interesting sandbox than anything else in the game. After the turrets are down, Mitchell has to take down 3 heavily armored AST troops. I kept getting pinned and repeatedly dying to the aircraft in the air. After trying various tactics, such as sniping the ASTs or machine gunning the planes, I landed on a different tactic. I fell back, zipping up to the buildings that had the turrets we just took over. I could easily shoot down the aircraft that had been harassing me and even take down exposed AST troops. It's not exactly the most complicated thing in the world, but still. This kind of out-of-the-box problem solving is not something you often encounter in COD campaigns. I wish even more of the levels had this design philosophy because it works incredibly well with AEW's mechanics. Just when the US forces seem to be making headway, Irons unleashes his trap card. He unleashes Manticore, which kills everybody except Alona, Gideon, and Mitchell. I also think this is sound storytelling. Usually in stories, it feels a bit coincidental that only the main characters survive an attack like this, but our hero's survival of Manticore makes perfect sense. Atlas captures them and throws them into a prison camp. As their chain gang walks through the complex, they see Atlas ruthlessly massacring prisoners. It's a good way of showing how Irons' vision for the world isn't going to usher in a utopia. Far from it. Irons himself pays them a visit, essentially to gloat. He shoots Cormac and then moves on to Mitchell.
I believed in you. I gave you a second chance.
In this scene, he has absolutely no mercy for Mitchell. He shows him only disappointment and contempt, and he even physically beats Mitchell. I want you to keep this cruel treatment in mind because I'm going to talk about it later. After Irons departs, Gideon and Alona seize an opportunity to strike. They free Cormac and Mitchell and make their escape. Irons busted Mitchell's prosthetic arm, so he can only use his right hand. This results in a really creative gameplay segment where Mitchell can't reload. He has to scavenge enemy weapons on the ground. It's another example of how creative AEW's mission design can be. However, I question the wisdom of their plan here. Mitchell should really be the one helping Cormac out. Alona can handle a weapon far better with 2 hands than Mitchell can with 1. While the setup is an excuse for a pretty cool gameplay segment, so I won't harp on it too much. The mission ends with Mitchell taking control of an AST suit. The mission up until this point has reinforced Mitchell's vulnerability, so the contrast of the exosuit's power works well. They find a vehicle and make their way out. Unfortunately though, it's too late for Cormac. He bleeds out while the others watch. It's a sad moment. Cormac was a decent enough guy, and it's a bummer to see him go. Out of everyone in the story, it feels like he deserved to see Irons taken down the most. They have to stop Atlas from launching a larger Manticore strike, which will kill thousands. Gideon has a plan. Since they're almost out of options, it's a pretty bold one. He and Mitchell fly in with AST suits and cause havoc. They drop into the river and blast into Atlas's main building. This underground route is a pretty clever way for them to get in. It makes sense that Atlas wouldn't have as many defenses deep underground to protect against someone blasting through the riverbed. After some tough fighting, they manage to stop the Manticore launch, although they fry their AST suits in the process. Mitchell is pretty banged up from the ordeal, so Gideon carries him out. Mitchell blacks out, and when he awakens, he finds himself face to face with Irons himself. Gideon and Mitchell aim their weapons, but Irons hacks into their exosuits, immobilizing them. The use of this hacking technology is interesting to me. It seems incredibly powerful to disable exosuits, and it's a bit odd that this hacking hasn't been employed in the field more often. Maybe it's really short-ranged or something. I'll write it off. Irons has them dead to rights. Instead of killing them though, he spares them.
I could have killed you in the prison camp. I could kill you now. But I won't. I'm not a monster.
I really don't like this moment. It just doesn't feel logical or consistent with Irons' character so far. Remember back to the prison scene. Despite Irons' words right now, he was not merciful to Mitchell then. He was the opposite. He was cruel, and yet only contempt and disappointment for Mitchell. Although he didn't outright kill Mitchell, it's very much implied that Mitchell and his allies would have been killed very shortly after. We walked past all the executions prior after all. Mitchell and his friends would have been shot in a ditch like all the rest. So classifying Irons' actions as merciful then is wrong. And that was when the situation was favorable to Irons. He was winning. If he could afford to be merciful at any point, it was then. Not now though. Mitchell and Gideon are at his doorstep. If Irons doesn't kill them right now, they will kill him. It's the exact opposite of when he should be merciful. Sure, it has been established that Irons does care what Mitchell thinks of him, for Will's sake, but it doesn't feel like enough justification here. Irons at the end of the day has always done the self-advantageous thing over the right thing. It's another example of how Irons' character could feel half-baked. His inner motivations are interesting to ponder, but the way his decisions are presented to the player come across as plot-motivated rather than character-motivated. This is the best example. Why does Irons spare Mitchell? Well, plot-wise, it's because Mitchell is the hero, and he needs to save the day. That feels like the real reason, rather than Irons' own motivations. See what I mean? Sure enough, Mitchell gets free of his exosuit and chases Irons. It's not exactly clear where Irons is running to. What exactly is he going to do when he reaches the balcony? He and Mitchell clash, and Irons falls off the building. He manages to snag Mitchell's arm.
Mitchell! What are you doing? What are you doing? Mitchell! I gave you that arm! Mitchell! I gave you a second chance!
I do like the symbolism in Irons' last moments. Mitchell severs his arm, his last physical connection to Atlas, and his last debt, which also severs his last emotional connection. Gideon pulls Mitchell up, and Mitchell reflects on Irons. He determines that Irons' death isn't the end, but instead the beginning. There's an implication that war with Atlas isn't over yet. But here is where the story ends. The ending overall feels rushed. Atlas has been built up as this monumental threat, with Irons being the calculating genius at the helm. Yet we're able to roll in with 2 ASTs and entirely crumble them. Irons just pops up at the end and dies in an underwhelming way. There are some parts I do like about it, such as the arm severing part, and I do think the plan is clever. It's not the worst ending in the world. However, I think Irons and Atlas's defeat deserved a bit more gravitas. With that, we've reached the end of the story. I'm going to take a step back and look at the game as a whole and give my final thoughts. In the intro, I talked about how I thought Advanced Warfare had the most interesting premise in the whole series, and how its setting has the most potential. So with that in mind, did Advanced Warfare live up to its potential? In some ways, I would say it certainly did. This futuristic world is depicted beautifully, from the jaw-dropping streets of Seoul to New Baghdad. The visual design of this world, and all the advanced technology, has a grounded feel to them that I find really captivating. I want another entry in the sub-series just to explore new levels and check out new tech. So from a visual and presentation standpoint, I think AW knocks it out of the park. As far as world building goes, I think AW does a decent job. There are some clumsy exposition moments for sure, but overall, the world is presented in an immersive and digestible way, which makes the setting feel real and captivating. Again, I'd love a sequel to explore the evolution of the various factions, from Sentinel to Atlas to even the KVA. The fact that I'm interested in the factions is another win in my book. The gameplay also lives up to the vision. The exo combat offers a genuinely different experience to anything that came before, and the game offers variety that keeps every level fresh. The plotting and pacing of the story is well done. The story moves at a quick pace, not overstaying any plot point or moment for too long. When the KVA's threat wraps up, Irons' picks up nicely from there. Overall, I like the characters too. Gideon and Cormac were my favorites, although I liked Alona too. Irons is one of the better villains in the series. So there's a lot to like about this campaign. I really do think it's great, and it lives up to its potential in many ways. However, AW also stumbles in a handful of areas. The biggest area is its inconsistency in writing. I said how the overall world building is decent, but there are a lot of awkward moments where the exposition is inserted, which can take you out of the immersion. Along with that, Irons is written inconsistently. He's a captivating villain with interesting motives. However, he just doesn't feel fleshed out enough for all his actions to feel sensible. A few key moments feel like he's acting a certain way because the story requires him to, not because it's natural to his character. The ending of the game too feels a bit underwhelming for how big of a threat Atlas is. Things wrap up too quickly and it just doesn't feel earned. The premise of this world also has a ton of potential for interesting questions and moral dilemmas, which I talked about in the intro. However, AW doesn't explore any of them in a ton of depth, and I think that's another missed potential. Along with that, there's one more thing that keeps Advanced Warfare from the top echelon of COD campaigns. It's hard to articulate, but there's just a lack of X factor that the greatest campaigns have. I guess it's easier to explain in contrast. Take COD 4 for instance. That campaign has a handful of iconic moments, things which really leave an impression for years to come. For instance, the nuke going off in shock and awe, the all gillied up mission, or I could go on and on. Or for instance, take the big revelations in the Black Ops games. AW has excellent mission design and a pretty well executed plot, yet it doesn't really have many wow moments like these. Although the Soul mission is one of my favorites in the series and it's an excellent introduction, I wouldn't classify it in this category. Not that this lack of wow factor is necessarily a bad thing, and I realize that this is a nebulous criticism. But I don't know. I kept waiting for a moment to blow me away or shatter my expectations, but it didn't really come. All in all, Advanced Warfare has a great campaign, and I think it's extremely underrated. It does a bunch of things incredibly well. However, I think it just misses the peaks that the series has experienced in the past. The potential of Advanced Warfare's world is still there. It's the game in the series I want a sequel to the most. Maybe someday we'll be able to step back into the exosuits once more. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing or even dropping a comment. All of them really help with the algorithm. If you want to support me further, please consider checking out my novel series, which is linked in the description. It's a sci-fi dystopian thriller, and Advanced Warfare was actually one of my many inspirations for writing it. So if you liked Advanced Warfare, I think there's a really good chance you would dig my story. Either way, thanks for all the support. It means the world that you made it all the way through. Until next time.